Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's call with LNI's Acting Secretary Jennifer Berrier, Senator Christine Tartaglione, and Andrea Grove, owner of Elementary Coffee. I'm Teresa, Deputy Communications Director for LNI. Before we get started with opening remarks, I'd like to provide you with a few quick reminders about today's virtual media briefing. The purpose of today's briefing is to provide your readers, viewers, and listeners with information and details about the urgent need to raise Pennsylvania's minimum wage. For questions on this topic, please use the blue chat icon located on the lower right-hand side of your screen to submit your name and media outlet. When you are next in the queue, you will receive a message that reads, "The host will ask you to unmute." Please click that button. Then I will announce your name and media outlet, and you may ask your question live at that time. In the interest of time, you'll be limited to one question, but time permitting, we'll open up the call for a second round of questions on today's topic of Pennsylvania's minimum wage. You may submit any additional follow-up questions or general agency-related questions to the press resource account, and we will address them after the call. Following the call, we will provide participating media outlets with a link to the recording. For your awareness, this call is being recorded. If you do not consent to being recorded, please hang up now. Any reporters wishing to record this briefing may do so now. Let's get started with comments from Acting Secretary Jennifer Berrier. Secretary?
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning, everyone. I am Labor and Industry Acting Secretary Jennifer Berrier. Thank you for joining me today. I'd especially like to thank our honored guests, Elementary Coffee owner Andrea Grove, for being here, as well as Senator Tina Tartaglione. We are here today to once again call for an increase to Pennsylvania's woefully inadequate minimum wage. We've been issuing this call for nearly 12 years, and in that time, prices for food, housing, education, childcare, and other critical needs have increased significantly, while the minimum wage Pennsylvanians earn has remained stagnant. While every single state that surrounds Pennsylvania has recognized this loss of purchasing power and increased their minimum wage, we continue to fall further and further behind. Now, many Pennsylvanians are facing job loss and have no savings because they're working jobs that paid too little to allow them to set aside money for emergencies. We cannot let this crisis continue. We need to raise our minimum wage now and allow hardworking Pennsylvanians the dignity of providing for themselves. Governor Tom Wolf is proposing raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour, which would boost the pay for 1.1 million Pennsylvanians. A single worker earning the current minimum wage, which is $7.25 per hour in Pennsylvania, would have to work 67 hours per week to earn a living wage. And that's just a living wage, not one that leaves room for anything extra. You'll hear from the other side of this that the minimum wage is for folks starting out, and that if they want to make more, they'll have to get more training. But I ask you, how does a person have time to get more training when they work 67 hours per week? How does a person have the money to get more training when every cent they earn goes towards the minimum standard of living in Pennsylvania? Our substandard minimum wage is one of the many reasons so many Pennsylvanians are stuck in a cycle of poverty. While we so often hear about the high school burger flipper depiction of the minimum wage worker, that is far from the truth. 76% of the workers benefiting from a $15 minimum wage are 20 years of age or older, and 40% of those workers are 40 years of age or older. It's time to stop the myth that adults aren't working in low-wage jobs. It's a harmful stereotype that disrespects 1 million Pennsylvania workers who would get a boost in pay from a $15 minimum wage. Raising the wage would allow more than 102,000 adults to work their way off of Medicaid. And that's going to help not just those Pennsylvanians, but it will also help all of us by reducing the cost of providing Medicaid. Increasing the minimum wage will grow the middle class by putting more money into the pockets of workers, which gives businesses more customers, which I think we've seen from the current federal stimulus packages that have been going out. Pennsylvania workers are skilled, they are hardworking, and they are worth more than $7.25 an hour. It's time to bring our archaic minimum wage into line with modern costs. It's time to start paying Pennsylvanians what they would get paid in our neighboring states. And it's time to give every hardworking Pennsylvanian a true living wage. Thank you again to everyone who is joining me as we once again call attention to this critical issue. I will now turn things over to my friend, Senator Tina Tartaglione. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Secretary Berrier, for inviting me to participate in this event. And thank you, Ms. Grove, for helping us to share the critical message that raising the minimum wage will benefit working women and benefit businesses like yours. The month of March is a great time to engage Pennsylvania women in this campaign because it's Women's History Month, when we commemorate the great achievements of individual women throughout our history. I think it's very important for us to keep in mind during this period that women's history is not isolated to the distant past. It is a living, breathing history, and women continue to make history every day. Personally, and I think all of us here agree, I would like our history to reflect that we are doing everything in our power to support Pennsylvanians, working women, and their families. And we are doing everything we can to ensure that all employers pay fair living wages. It is clear and obvious that our current minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is woefully inadequate and obsolete. It is unconscionable that there are thousands of people in this Commonwealth who work full-time hours and still live in poverty and collect public assistance merely to make ends meet. And it is unacceptable that the greatest burden of low wages fall on Pennsylvania women. Among the 1.1 million workers who would directly benefit from our minimum wage proposal, individuals who now make less than $15 an hour, more than 60% of them are women. It is also true that despite the tremendous progress women have made toward equality in the workplace, women still earn significantly less than men do. Nationally, women make just 82 cents for every dollar that men make, based on median earnings. In Pennsylvania, the gender wage gap is even wider. Women make only 80 cents on a dollar. Therefore, it is critical that we raise the minimum wage, as I have proposed in Senate Bill 12, and as Representative Kim has proposed in the House. In doing so, we will be helping to end wage disparity for women. And contrary to much of the rhetoric from the other side of the aisle, raising the minimum wage responsibly, as we have proposed, is sustainable and advantageous for businesses. Many businesses, small and large, already have a $15 minimum wage policy in effect. These businesses note that paying workers fair living wages improves employee retention, customer service, and overall productivity. They also recognize that higher wages are an investment in the local economy. Employees who earn more money are likely to spend more money in the communities where they live and work. That said, I'd like to once again thank Ms. Grove, a woman business owner, for setting such a great example by paying your employees fair wages. And I'd like to thank Acting Secretary Berrier for taking a leadership role on this issue. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce my partner in the House who's done such great work, Representative Patty Kim.
Thank you, Senator, so much. And thank you, Acting Secretary, for putting us together. And I came on today because I want to highlight and tout the business owners of Elementary Coffee. They are in the city of Harrisburg. They have done a tremendous job, and not only in their work, their coffee, their marketing, the way they do business, but Andrea is different. And her story is amazing with how she grew up on a farm and whatnot. I'm not going to steal her thunder. But when she put together business model. She put a $15 wage up front for her workers because she knew how important it was. It's a priority. Instead of got to buy the building, the rent, the renovation, blah, 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 and then what's left to pay our workers. That's a lot of the models that's going on right now. She values the workers, and in return, they're going to be part of the vision. You know, it's a new, exciting coffee shop. It has a mission. You know, it's more than just coffee. And they're going to stay there, and they're going to want to invest, and they want to be a partner with her instead of an afterthought. So she is the way I think businesses need to run. It's not coincidental that we're all women here. We know what it's like to live within a tight budget, to make things happen, to multitask. We feel that strain and that pain when it comes to financial challenges. And so when women do better, their children do better, their families do better, their extended families do better, their neighborhoods, their communities do better. And so I am just so grateful, and I can't wait to pass it over to Andrea Grove for her to speak. And I am, again, super proud of her. She is an example of how businesses should be run locally as small business owners. And with that, Andrea Grove.
Oh gosh, I don't know how I can follow all of that, but thank you so much, Representative Patty Kim, and thank you so much, everyone else, for allowing me to speak here today. I did write up remarks, so I don't know. I'm going to just move into those, but I join everybody else here in saying that I'm extremely discouraged and disappointed that we are still having this conversation so many years later. I join my colleagues, my fellow business owners, my employees, and too many others in being extremely disappointed that we're still fighting for a fair working wage year after year. I join so many folks in wondering what it will take to finally value the individuals in the working class by raising the minimum wage. In the past year of COVID-19, it is surprising and disappointing that this pandemic is not enough to show everyone the change that needs to occur. Huge discrepancies that fall between people in society and the devalue of the working class individuals. This year has indeed been different. It has been a struggle. I had to pause and ponder if, due to the extreme challenges the COVID pandemic has thrown at all of us, if it changed the fight for a fair working wage at all. And I determined, as a very small business, barely keeping our own heads above water, despite struggling every day to make an income to be distributed among my team, that the only thing that has changed in the fight to raise the minimum wage is the obvious and desperate need to do so. The pandemic has thrown a blaring light on so many aspects of our society, but mainly it has shown how uneven and disproportionate our society really is. That there are folks all around us, even deemed essential, that are risking their lives to go to work and only getting paid minimum wage. But the working wage is so low that they have no choice to continue going to work again and again to scrape out a living that is below the poverty line. I can really only speak from my experience and privilege of operating a small woman-owned business, but I am aware that I'm nothing, my company is nothing, without the team that runs it. The team needs to be valued and prioritized above all else. This group of amazing individuals that I'm so honored to know needs to be prioritized even above myself. I am not saying that I always make the right decision when it comes to my small business operations, but I do always try to make the decision that most honors and respects and values the life and livelihoods of each of the members of my company's team. I'm honestly disgusted that due to the low minimum wage, there are many companies and organizations that continue to operate while exploiting their team and the workers that risk their lives daily. This is why we need to fight for the raising of the basic minimum wage to demand that each worker, each individual is at least valued as worthy of basic income. At this point, I can say I know of no small businesses, very proudly, operating in the Harrisburg area where I speak from that are not already paying above the minimum wage. However, I encourage each of these businesses and all businesses not to wait for the government to raise the wage, but to start or to continue to honor your workers today in how you budget, how you operate your business, and how you plan to move beyond the pandemic. I also want to encourage consumers to be part of the change as well. Support businesses you know value their team. Be willing to pay a slightly higher price for that item you know is crafted directly by somebody earning their living wage from it. And of course, as a service person, tip well. As the government continues to fail its working class by not raising the minimum wage, perhaps as a community we can prove to them that raising the wage is as simple as placing value on human lives over products, politics, and class differences. hopefully all together we can move forward into a future in which we respect each other's work and each live off an equitable wage. That's what I have for you all.
Thank you so much for those comments, Andrea. As we move into the Q&A portion of today's call, I want to remind everyone that our call is focused on providing information and details regarding Pennsylvania's minimum wage. If you have questions, please submit your name and media outlet in the chat box. I'll then send a message asking you to unmute your audio, and you'll be able to ask your questions live at that time. We're going to pause here for a moment and wait for some questions to roll in. And it looks like our first question today will be from Maria from Spotlight, PA.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this and for taking my question. So we know that the Senate has has in the past had some sort of appetite for raising the minimum wage, but the leadership in the House hasn't been willing to consider a minimum wage in years, despite the fact that, as you said, it's got bipartisan support. So how do you make any kind of minimum wage increase happen with leadership that won't consider it?
Yeah, we've been trying to figure that out for years. So I believe that, people think that, politicians, elected officials make the decisions. It's actually the social movement that pushes us. And I think we have a large enough crowd to say, you know what, 725 is ridiculous. And with the pressure, who the people we serve, our bosses, once we hear from them, we feel that pressure and that we need to move forward. And so what we're doing, and I want to thank, again, Acting Secretary and Senator Tartaglio, that we're just pushing folks to pressure them to budge. At this point, it's just ridiculous. And as Secretary Devin said, it's embarrassing. And so we're just sending out the message, and we hope that the message gets through and that we do the right thing for the hardest low-wage workers in Pennsylvania.
What I can suggest, I really believe that the citizens of this Commonwealth need to call their own representatives and their own senators that live in their district and let their voices be heard. Let them know that a $15 minimum wage should happen. The more they hear from their constituents, the folks that vote them into office, the more pressure will be put on to those individuals.
Next on deck, we have ABC 27's Daniel Hamburg. Daniel?
Hi. So my question is, obviously there are a lot of people against this all the time, but especially during COVID, the proposal here is that this would start the increase in July. So to those business owners who say, that's not doable with current finances to make such a large jump, what do you say to that?
So thank you, Daniel, for that question. As Andrea had pointed out, most businesses are paying more than $7.25 an hour, and this bill will not go straight to $15 an hour July. It will go to $12 an hour. And then every year with the senator in my bill, it would increase 50 cents every year until 2027. This is not tomorrow, it's 2027. We're giving businesses that runway to catch up to $15 an hour. And then we're going to tag on it with the consumer price index so we don't have to revisit this every 10 years. But we think that is the compromise that, we start with 12 and then we slowly raise it to $15 an hour.
Next, we have Lauren Rosenblatt from Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Lauren?
Hey, my questions are for Andrea. I was hoping you could talk more about the business side of it. Representative Kim said it was a decision that you made up front. So can you talk about your budgeting? And then, a lot of people are worried that raising the wage would prevent the number of workers that companies could hire. Can you talk about if you've ever had to make those decisions?
Yeah, thank you so much. I do think this past year has shed a lot of light. I think this is the most challenging time, hopefully, that any of us will have to go through as individuals and as small businesses. I think for me, we have been able to budget since the beginning exactly how the cash flow is in regards to who we hire. I have had struggles, in the past as far as trying to figure out and weighing the income based on the number of employees that I have, but that is always kind of evened out as far as being like, well, the employees, I think if you put their wages and what they deserve to make first, that will always drive the budget itself. And so we as a company have, in the scheme of, I think the world moved a lot slower, just simply because most of our money goes back into the workers. So we're not planting franchising elementaries everywhere across the city, though that would be fun. Actually, I don't really want that. But we are really just trying to direct the company as there's cash flow back to the employees themselves and back to the people who actually make the company what it is first and foremost. And I think if that is people's priorities, then the money will follow. Then your budgeting, then what you charge for us, for our lattes, for our drinks, those will all take into account what you need to pay your workers just to have them get a wage, raise the minimum wage, get a wage that is equitable. I really think just prioritizing from the start is what's really important. I think that's what we're really challenged to do right now is making sure that that's at the forefront.
Thank you so much for those comments, Andrea. It looks like we're moving into our second round of questions at this time. So I encourage any reporters that have any questions to please submit your name as well as your media outlet in the chat box, and we will let you ask your questions live. Next, we have Maria from Spotlight. Maria?
Yes, thank you again. I'm sure you guys saw the proposal from Senator Laughlin to raise it to $10 an hour and then increase with inflation. I'm wondering for the Democrats on the call is what you think of that proposal and if there's any compromise that you guys would be willing to consider.
Well, the one good thing about Senator Laughlin's bill is that it's tied to the CPI. I still believe $10 is too low to start. That it's not a fair wage. You're still well below the poverty level. I do believe that $12 is a fair wage, and we do raise it 50 cents a year until we get to $15. Representative Kim and myself. Let's see how it goes. We were able to pass a $9.50 minimum wage in the Senate before, but any raise in the minimum wage is good for minimum wage and low wage workers. That's all I can say.
So my sentiments are very similar to the senators. This is progress, and I was very encouraged to see our Republican senator propose that. The one good thing is it's raising the floor. It's raising the floor up, and hopefully all the wages will continue to go up. I haven't seen the exact language, but my first reaction was I was encouraged. And hopefully we can work with him to move it closer in our direction. But I was definitely encouraged by his proposal.
Well, ladies, that looks like that's all the questions we have for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. And Secretary Berrier, do you have any closing thoughts or remarks at this time?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Teresa. Pennsylvania has not raised its minimum wage in more than a decade, and that is unconscionable. I urge the General Assembly to support Governor Wolf, Senator Tartaglione, and Representative Kim in raising the minimum wage to $12 an hour with a pathway to $15 an hour. Let's show essential workers and low-wage workers that we care, and we can do that by raising the minimum wage. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us, and that's all the time we have for today. Please email our communications office with any additional questions. Thank you, and stay well.